It was a good day yesterday. It was a really good day. Vibes were incredibly high. I mean,
Yes.
I started yesterday. I'm starting my day. Practice starts. I'm watching the quarterbacks throw a little bit, watching some special team stuff, and then all of a sudden I see a crowd start gathering around the defensive linemen as they do their warm ups, do their drills, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should go check that out. And turns out that was a good idea because there was some big stuff happening over there.
Yeah, Cam showing up. What was your reaction? How shocked were you? You were there. I was driving to the facility when I got your text, which was just a picture of Cam that said Cam's back, and I said, "Holy crap! Okay, didn't see that one coming." What was your reaction when you walked over, saw Big 97 standing there?
Well, I was like, first of all, I got to text Noah, and then I got to get some video, and then I really want to see how Mike Tomlin reacts to it because Mike Tomlin immediately saw every member of the media walk over to Cam Heyward, walk over to the defensive lineman, start taking some videos. He and Cam start posing for pictures. He's cracking
Yep.
jokes. He's telling Keanu Benton, I'm not talking to you at all today. I do not care about you today. We got 97 back, and today's all about him. It was really funny. The vibe's really high. You could tell Cam was just smiling ear to ear as he's going through these drills. He was really excited to be back, and I think that's the biggest thing. Cam is just someone who I think it is impossible to keep him away from football for very long, and he made sure of that. So I'm sure it was, a bit of a tough decision to come back, a tougher decision to stay away. But
Yeah.
everyone, to a man, was, I think, happy to see Cam back on the field.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think just him being there, yeah, it probably was an emotional decision and something that just wanting to be back on the field played a role in. But at the same time, I think that it's potentially a good indication that him and the Pittsburgh Steelers are on really good terms and that they are working through this despite some sort of drama or dramatic way of going about some things that maybe spark some negative headlines. I think that the love is still very, very strong, hasn't hindered whatsoever. Cam spoke after practice. You were in that press conference talking to 97 and everything that it means and what it doesn't mean and where he and the Pittsburgh Steelers stand, a potential hold-in during training camp. What were your big takeaways talking to him afterwards?
Yeah, so I think the first one was he doesn't really seem to think that he and the Steelers are anywhere close, quite honestly,
Yeah.
to a contract extension. What he said was, I don't think a deal is happening tomorrow. He kind of said that as a joke, but I kind of took that to mean that he and his representation of the Steelers are still pretty far apart on a deal.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is that he addressed obviously the holdout, a potential for a holdout at training camp. He said he plans to be there. Doesn't exactly know, hasn't really thought about. Allegedly, he told us what he will do at training camp when he does get there. Whether he'll practice, whether he'll hold in, we don't really know yet. And doesn't sound like he's decided either. I think we're still a long way from it. We still got one more week of OTAs. We still got rookie minicamp, and then we got a long break before they convene in Latrobe for the start of training camp. So
Yeah.
I'd say those were the two biggest things. But then he also dropped he dropped a kind of the biggest nugget I thought was he said he feels like he has at least 3 years left or 3 years left. So he kind of put a pretty hard, I guess not a hard limit on himself, but he only imagines himself playing football for 3 more years. I assume that's including this year. So I think Cam is kind of recognizing his own mortality here. I think that's a part of the contract negotiations as well. When Cam's coming out and saying, look, I'm only playing for X number of years, he recognizes the wear and tear on his body,
Yeah.
the desire to, spend a bunch more time with his family and everything like that. I think he's recognizing all of that and taking all of that into account. And I think that's part of, his conversations with the Steelers about, okay, what kind of deal do you get me on? How much is it going to be? That all has to kind of play into, look, I'm only playing for 3 more years, and I think I can be really
Yeah.
good for those 3 years, but it is only going to be 3 years, and everyone's got to start thinking about exit strategies and how they prepare for life after Cam because, and so admittedly, he's not going to be around forever, and everyone's got to prepare for that.
Yeah. And you said it yesterday. You said Cam's real gray. Didn't realize how gray Cam was getting. It's noticeable when guys start hitting the age of, you could tell that you've taken a beating for a decade. You've been hit by a train 18 times a year for a decade. It's tough. It starts to really wear on your body. But I think there's multiple things here. Let's start with the holdout and where Cam is currently. They're not close on a contract, so you can't imagine that they're going to be close come training camp. You probably would imagine that happens later in training camp, closer to the season. a hold in isn't the worst thing in the world. It's happened a number of times with guys like TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Alex Highsmith, Deontay Johnson. It's something that the Pittsburgh Steelers have somewhat adapted. And honestly, it's a better way to go about things because you lose the negative, crazy, dramatic headlines. You lose the Brandon Ayuk isn't at the 49ers facility, or Micah Parsons isn't showing up, or whatever, or anybody deleting anybody from their social media, which seems to be the new trend when it comes to the NFL. It just allows you, hey, I'm here, but I'm not practicing. I'm not putting my body at risk until I have a deal locked up. I mean, do you anticipate a deal gets done beforehand? I don't know if I do. And a hold in, is that an issue for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially if they're nowhere close on a deal right now?
Yeah, I don't think a deal gets done before training camp starts. I think they'll definitely get one done before week one, but I don't think it'll be before training camp. But I do think we're going to have a week or two where Cam is holding in, and I don't think that's going to be a disaster. I think it's going to be really tough for Cam to continue to hold in. I mean, look, if he couldn't stay away for more than a couple weeks of OTAs, then I doubt he'll be able to stay away when there's, a full team out there. It's training camp. The season's bearing down on you, and he's really feeling the pressure to get ready now. So I just don't think he'll hold out for long, but I think he is going to have to take a week or two and not do anything at OTAs. Like you said, that's not a disaster. I mean, not only has it happened before, but it's honestly almost better for Cam. I mean, this is a guy who, at 35 years old, I mean, Mike Tomlin alluded to this during OTAs too. He said it's almost better that Cam isn't here, and we can get a look at the guys who we don't really know anything about.
Yeah.
I think they're going to kind of take the same approach. They're not going to panic because Cam's not doing every single drill for the first couple weeks of training camp, and I think they're going to kind of live with that. I just think it's going to be Cam who's going to drive this. Like how low is he willing to go? How much is he willing to settle on a contract extension if it means he gets back on the field playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Because I think that's all he wants to do. That's all he's really ever wanted to do. And I just think he's going to be impossible to keep away from practicing with the Steelers for very long.
I think that at some point middle ground is met, just because exactly what you said. Cam just wants to be out there. And at some point, the Steelers are going to look at it and say, okay, well, look, we can afford this, so let's just do this. It doesn't break the bank. I would imagine incentives are a very heavy thing in Cam's next contract, just to kind of get things to a place where he feels comfortable and they feel comfortable. And I don't know, like, I don't want to say I don't trust, but I think the reports of, Cam isn't going to get anywhere near the number that he's looking for, or maybe a bit dramatic. I think that the Steelers will try to find a way to make him happy, while at the same time making sure that financially they're in a good spot and they have the options to do this or do that. And you could always rework these things. And I think that's the biggest thing, is if he has an understanding of, hey, look, your contract might be $13-14 million a year with upwards of 16-17. We're going to probably restructure that each year for the next 2 years to make sure that turns into a signing bonus and we gain some cap space, because that's just wild to think that that's not, that's a number that we're comfortable with for a 36-year-old. And I think that that's a ground that they'll stand on.
Right. And I think there's some goodwill going both ways. Like, neither side seems to, I think you mentioned this like at the top of the show. Like, I don't think there's any resentment between either side. I think they both kind of understand that this is just the business. Cam is at a certain point in his career. He's at a certain point with his contract situation, and the Steelers are at kind of an inflection point with the guys that they're going to have to pay, the young people they have on this team, all possible extensions coming up for other guys as well. They've got a lot of math to do, and Cam is a pretty major part of that math. It's not something that they can take lightly. Yeah. And the same goes for Cam. It's just not. He's at a point in his career where he's got to take this really seriously too. I don't think Cam's ever shown that he is not a team player, that he's not fully invested in the Steelers winning. So I think that goes a long way to these negotiations being a lot more civil and probably getting resolved in a much more, I don't even know what the word is, decent or amicable way. I think everyone's going to come out relatively happy, even if there's some short-term pain.
Yeah, I could see a situation where, remember TJ stomped into Art Rooney's office and slammed the door and was like, I'm signing, screw it, give me the paper, who cares, I'm not looking for more money. I think that could happen, where it's just like, look it, man, let's just come to an agreement and figure this out. And I think the Steelers are a very peaceful team when it comes to their negotiations. So I think that this is going to turn out in a positive way, and it's big news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just for him to be back at OTAs, massive news.